When I graduated top of my class and got a job offer in another state, I came home to pack, only to find my room empty, my trophies in the trash, and a note from Dad: "This isn't your home anymore. You chose career over family." A year later, my success made headlines. Now they're flooding my inbox. "We're so proud. Come visit." Hey Reddit. I'm 27M, and I guess this is my way of finally putting everything into words. I've never posted before, but something about today, about opening that last message from my mother, just pushed me over the edge. Maybe it's therapy. Maybe it's closure. I don't know yet. I'm not here to be dramatic or to get sympathy. I just want to tell this the way it happened. If you've ever felt like you were born into a family that saw you as some kind of foreign object, like no matter what you did, you were the wrong shape, wrong sound, wrong everything, then maybe parts of this will sound familiar. I grew up in a quiet town in Pennsylvania, the kind where people spend their whole lives 5 minutes from where they were born. Everyone knows everyone, and your reputation follows you like your shadow. My family, the Vaughns, have been in the same house since my dad was a teenager. We're not rich, not poor, just stable, I guess. Middle of the road people with meatloaf dinners and lawn chairs set up during fireworks season. My dad, Ronald, was a police officer for nearly 30 years before retiring. He's the sort of man who still wears a wristwatch he got in 1989 and organizes his tools by size and shape. Stubborn doesn't begin to cover it. If you believe something on Monday, it's still gospel by Friday, even if every fact says otherwise. My mom, Marianne, is quieter. Soft-spoken, mild, always the one to pass the mashed potatoes and avoid eye contact when tension rises. She worked as a preschool assistant at our church when I was a teenager, mostly to keep herself busy after my siblings got older. I'm the youngest of four. My siblings, Anna, 35F, Kyle, 33M, and Marcus, 30M, stayed close. Most of them got married right out of high school or shortly after. None of them went to college. That's not a dig, college just wasn't on their radar. They were more interested in trades, local jobs, family. In a town like ours, that's the norm. You build a life early and settle in. But I always knew I was different. Not better, just wired differently. When I was a kid, I used to spend hours at the library down the road. I remember being 9 years old, curled up on the blue carpet between the history and science shelves while other kids played tag in the parking lot. I liked numbers, patterns, puzzles. I liked knowing how things worked, why the stars moved, how bridges held weight, what made computers tick. My dad didn't get it. I don't think he ever tried to. At dinner, when I talked about books or school, he'd change the subject. If I mentioned a science fair or a project I was working on, he'd nod vaguely, then turn to Kyle or Marcus to ask how work was going. And when I started winning academic competitions, regionals, then states, he never came to a single one. Once, when I was 14, I got first place in a robotics tournament. We built an autonomous rover that could navigate obstacles. It was a big deal to me. I brought the trophy home and set it on the mantle. The next morning, it was gone. I found it in the garage next to an old radio and a cracked photo frame. When I asked my dad why he moved it, he just said, "That shelf's for family things." I didn't say anything. I just nodded. But something inside me turned cold after that. Still, I kept working. I kept building and studying and applying for every scholarship I could find. When I got into MIT with a full ride, I was too scared to tell anyone for 3 days. When I finally worked up the courage and told my family over dinner, the room fell completely silent. My mom was the first to speak. "That's far," she said, her eyes on her plate. Anna made some joke about me becoming a robot myself. Carl just shook his head. But my dad? He looked right at me and said, "So you're just going to leave?" That was it. No congratulations. No questions. No pride. Just an accusation. From that point on, things got tense. They said I was turning my back on them, that I was chasing something fancy that wouldn't last, that people like us didn't belong in places like that. When I left for school, no one came with me. No one helped me pack. My mom gave me a quilt and some peanut butter crackers for the trip. My dad stood in the driveway with his arms crossed. As I pulled away, he nodded once, not a goodbye, just emotion, like someone closing a door. I didn't come home much after that. I wanted to, but every time I tried to make plans, something would come up. My texts would go unanswered. My brothers always had work, and Anna was too busy with the kids. When I did make it home once during sophomore year, the house felt foreign. I slept on the couch because Kyle had taken over my room to store tools. No one asked about school. So I stopped trying. Instead, I focused on my work. I pushed myself. I took extra classes, did internships, made connections. I stayed on campus over holidays to work in the lab. By the time I hit my final year, I had job offers lined up, real offers, ones people dream about. A company in Seattle, I won't name it, but it's one you'd recognize, offered me a starting position that made my hands shake when I read the number. 6 figures, relocation bonus, mentorship program. The day I accepted the offer, I walked down to the river and sat under this old oak tree I used to visit when things got hard. I just sat there for an hour, letting it sink in. I'd made it. On my own. After graduation, I planned to go home for 1 week, just to pack what little was left of my childhood room. Say goodbye. Maybe try to make peace before the move. I thought maybe things had cooled off. Maybe the distance had given everyone time to adjust. So I booked the ticket. One way. My flight landed on a quiet Tuesday evening. When I pulled into the driveway, something felt off. The porch light was off. No one came out to greet me. I figured they were just tired or busy. It was late, after all. I still had my key. The door creaked open like it always had, and the house smelled the same, wood polish and distant coffee. I took a deep breath, told myself not to expect anything, and walked upstairs to my room. Third door on the right. But when I opened it, it wasn't my room anymore. So there I was, standing in the hallway of the house I grew up in, my duffel bag still slung over one shoulder, hand resting on the doorknob of what used to be my bedroom. Except it wasn't a bedroom anymore. The first thing that hit me was the echo. The sound of the door swinging open bounced off bare walls and an uncovered floor. The carpet, the same soft gray one that had been there since I was 12, was gone. Replaced with cold wooden planks, scuffed along the edges like someone had dragged furniture back and forth over it. The walls, once covered in posters, medals, shelves, framed certificates, were blank. A faint outline of where my bookshelf used to be remained, the paint slightly darker, like the wall had aged around the memory of it. No bed, no desk, no signs of me, not a sock, not a book, not even a thumbtack left in the wall. It was like I'd never lived there at all. I stood there for a full minute, maybe more, not moving. I thought maybe I had opened the wrong door. Maybe my mind was playing tricks on me, that long flight and all. So I stepped back and checked the hallway. Third door on the right. My door. I took a hesitant step inside. The air was musty, untouched. The closet door was ajar, and something about it tugged at me. I walked over and gently pulled it open. Empty, except for a note. It was taped at eye level, a plain white sheet of printer paper. I recognized the handwriting instantly. Bold, sharp lettering, all capitalized. My dad always wrote like that, like he was issuing orders on a form that might be filed away forever. It said, "This isn't your home anymore. You chose your path. Family comes first." That was it. No greeting, no signature, no welcome back. Just a cold, declarative sentence, like a verdict that had already been carried out. I don't know how long I stood there, staring at it. It felt like my ears were ringing, but there was no sound. Just this dull buzz inside me, part disbelief, part realization. I looked around the room again, this time slower, trying to process. Where were my books? My awards? The model I'd built of the Mars lander in high school? The letters of congratulations from teachers? The old laptop I'd kept for nostalgia? My childhood sketchpad? I went downstairs, trying to keep my breath steady. The lights were off, but I could hear the quiet hum of the refrigerator in the kitchen. I didn't want to wake anyone, assuming they were home. So I moved carefully, opened the door to the garage, the only other place things might have been moved to. That's when I saw the black trash bags. 3 of them. Big, crinkled bags leaning against the wall beside the lawnmower. One was half open. I crouched down and gently peeled it back. Inside, I found my state science fair medal. Bent. A cracked picture frame. It was the photo from high school graduation, me in my gown, smiling, holding my diploma. The glass was shattered. The corner of the frame had snapped clean off. Underneath that, my 7th grade spelling bee plaque. A notebook with my college essays. An envelope filled with letters from professors, mentors, even one from the dean congratulating me on my research grant. All tossed like trash. Literal trash. I didn't cry. Not then. I just felt hollow. Like something deep inside me had gone quiet. I picked up the medal and held it in my hands, unsure what to do. That's when I heard a voice behind me. "What are you doing?" I turned. It was Marcus, my second oldest brother. He was standing at the door leading from the kitchen to the garage, one hand on the frame, his brow furrowed like I was some kind of trespasser. "I came to pack my things," I said. My voice sounded small. He crossed his arms and leaned against the door frame. "You mean the junk? Dad said you weren't coming back. Figured he'd clean it out. You threw it all away?" I asked, barely above a whisper. He shrugged. "What did you expect? You left. Didn't even call most holidays. Haven't been around in years. People move on. I didn't stop being part of this family," I said. Marcus let out a dry, humorless laugh. "Didn't you? MIT, Seattle, all those big ideas. You didn't want to be one of us. So why keep pretending you are?" He left the room before I could answer. I sat on the garage step until the sun started rising, unable to move, the cold of the cement creeping through my jeans. I didn't go back upstairs. I didn't see my parents that morning. I just picked a few things out of the bags, the letter from my mentor, my medal, a small sketch I did when I was 11 of a space shuttle, and left. I checked into a motel on the edge of town and slept for most of the next day, phone turned off, blinds closed. I didn't go back to the house. I left for Seattle 2 days later. And for a while, I told myself that was the end of it. But life has a funny way of turning things around. Fast forward 1 year, a headline, a feature article, and suddenly everything changed. They all came crawling back. After I moved to Seattle, I threw myself into my new life like it was a lifeboat. The job was everything I had worked for and more. I was surrounded by people who thought like me, who asked big questions, who stayed late not because they had to, but because they wanted to. We were building something that could change how people lived, worked, learned. And for the first time in a long time, I felt like I belonged. I made friends. I started running again. I bought a second-hand bike and rode it along the waterfront every Saturday. I found a quiet little bookstore where the owner would slip me recommendations based on what I bought last. I even started tutoring students online in the evenings, kids who reminded me of myself at that age. Curious, isolated, bright-eyed. But even as life moved forward, something stayed stuck in me. That garage, those bags, that note in the closet. The way Marcus spoke to me like I was a ghost that had outstayed its welcome. I didn't talk about it. Not to anyone. I boxed it up and tucked it into the back of my mind like a drawer you don't open unless you have to. Then, about 10 months into the job, the project I'd been working on, a data compression algorithm for large-scale educational systems, won a major innovation award. I didn't expect it. Honestly, I'd submitted the paper half out of obligation, thinking nothing would come of it. But it caught traction. A few weeks later, a journalist called. The article that came out wasn't huge by media standards, but in academic and tech circles, it made waves. Local student turned tech innovator, how a kid from a tiny Pennsylvania town is changing how the world shares information. They used my old yearbook photo, talked about my background, the scholarships, the move across the country. My school posted it. The company shared it. It trended for a few hours on a news app, just enough to make people take notice. And that's when the messages started. The first one came from Anna. "Saw your article. Wow, we're all so proud." Mom cried. "You should come visit soon." I didn't answer. I stared at it for a long time, thumb hovering over the screen. Then I put the phone down and went for a walk. The next day, Kyle messaged me. "Big shot now, huh? Not bad for the family reject." That one stung. The smiley face at the end didn't soften the jab. Then came Mom. Her message was longer. "Hi, sweetheart. I just want you to know we've been following everything. Your dad showed me the article. He even shared it with some of his friends at the station. We're just so proud of the man you've become. I know things were hard before, but we always knew you'd do something special. Please come home for a weekend. We'd love to catch up." We always knew. That line sat in my chest like a stone. And finally, 2 days later, came the message from my father. No greeting. No emojis. Just this. "You've made the family name proud. Come home and let us celebrate you properly." I stared at those words for a long time. Celebrate me properly. The same man who had looked at me and said, "You're just going to leave," now wanted to throw some kind of welcome parade. I didn't reply to any of them. Not then. But something inside me shifted. Not anger, exactly. More like clarity. A decision began to form. So I started planning. I took a day off work and called in a few favors. I made arrangements, discreetly. And then, about 2 weeks later, I wrote back. I messaged Mom first. I told her I'd come home for a weekend in May. Just a short visit. She was overjoyed, sent a wall of exclamation marks, said she'd make all my favorite meals, that she'd tell everyone. Then I emailed my old high school principal, Mr. Landry. He'd always been one of the few adults in my life who believed in me. Back in 10th grade, when I wanted to take extra science classes and couldn't afford the books, he paid for them out of his own pocket. I never forgot that. I told him I was coming back into town, asked if I could speak to some of the current students about STEM opportunities, scholarships, careers, especially the kids who felt stuck. He said yes. More than yes. He said he'd arrange an assembly, notify local press, even invite alumni and parents. Now here's the part where it gets layered. Because while I was setting this up, Mom was busy planning her own celebration. Turns out, the Vaughns were throwing a backyard homecoming party. Anna made a Facebook event. Kyle was inviting coworkers. Marcus, according to my cousin, was boasting about how he helped shape my drive and ambition. The whole town was being told I was returning, not just for a visit, but for them. As if they had raised me into this person. As if they had supported and nurtured me, guided me, shaped me. They were trying to rewrite history. And I decided I'd let them, at least for a little while. Let them build the narrative. Let them decorate the backyard with string lights and folding chairs and a banner that probably said, "Welcome home, genius," or something just as hollow. Let them prepare to take credit. Because when the weekend came, when I finally stepped off that plane and walked into the town I had once fled from, I wasn't coming to be embraced. I was coming to set the record straight. And I had a plan. I arrived in town late Friday afternoon, alone, carrying nothing but a small travel bag and a folder under my arm. I didn't go straight to my parents' house. Instead, I headed to my old high school. Mr. Landry greeted me at the front office like no time had passed. He looked older, grayer, but the warmth in his eyes was the same. "You didn't have to do this," he said. "I wanted to," I told him. And I meant it. The auditorium was modest, not more than 300 seats, but it was full. Students, teachers, parents, even a local journalist with a voice recorder. There were familiar faces scattered throughout the crowd, folks from town I hadn't seen since graduation. I walked up to the podium and took a breath. Then I told the truth. I spoke about my journey. How I'd left with one suitcase, a scholarship, and a heart full of fear. How I'd failed, stumbled, and kept going. How mentors, strangers, and friends had picked me up more times than I could count. But most importantly, I talked about what wasn't there for me and what I hoped could change for the next generation. I wasn't encouraged at home, I said. I wasn't told to reach for more. I was told to stay small, to be quiet, to put family reputation above my dreams. When I left, I was called selfish, disloyal. They said I chose a path that excluded them. And in a way, they were right, because sometimes the only way to grow is to walk away from what keeps you planted in the wrong soil. A silence fell across the room. I wasn't bitter in my tone. I didn't name names. But people understood. Afterward, students lined up to talk. One girl cried and told me she was applying to out-of-state programs, but her parents were pressuring her to stay. Another boy asked how to get into the same fellowship I had. I gave him my email. The article came out the next day. Local innovator returns to inspire students, opens up about lack of support at home. By the time I pulled up to the Vaughn's house, the party was well underway. Twinkling string lights zigzagged between the maple trees, casting a warm glow over the backyard. Folding tables groaned under the weight of casseroles, salads, and an absurdly large cake decorated with the words "Homegrown Genius Returns" in bright blue icing. The scent of charcoal smoke mingled with something sweet, cupcakes, as I soon realized. Marcus was stationed by the grill, flipping burgers with practiced efficiency, the slight smirk on his face telling me he was enjoying the attention. Nearby, Anna flitted through the crowd with a tray of cupcakes, each topped with a little edible photo of me, grinning in a cap and gown from years ago. It was unsettling, this over-the-top display of pride that felt more like a spectacle than genuine affection. Kyle stood in the middle of a small group, animated and loud. I caught snippets of his voice. He always had that spark. We all saw it early on. He was clearly playing the part of the family spokesperson, the one who tried to spin the narrative in our favor. When I stepped onto the grass, the atmosphere shifted. Conversations hushed, as darted toward me. Some faces lit up, smiles breaking through, others froze, caught between surprise and discomfort. A few distant relatives I barely remembered offered quick, awkward handshakes. It felt like I just walked onto a stage I wasn't invited to but was expected to perform on. Dad was near the back porch, leaning against the railing with his arms crossed. He looked out of place, less a welcoming host and more a reluctant actor in someone else's play. I caught his gaze, but he quickly looked away. Mom, on the other hand, rushed toward me, arms wide. "You made it," she said breathlessly, her voice cracking slightly. "I did," I replied, managing a small smile. I let her hug me, the familiarity both comforting and foreign. Before I could settle into the scene they'd created, they ushered me toward a table where a microphone waited. Someone handed it to me with a grin like I was the star of the night. But I wasn't there to play their game. I held up the folder I'd brought. The room quieted as I spoke. "Before I say anything," I began, "I want to share something with all of you." I opened the folder carefully and started passing around its contents. Photos, printed articles, emails I'd received from students after my speech at the high school, even a candid photo of the auditorium audience taken by Mr. Landry backstage. "These," I said, voice steady, "are the real reasons I came home. Not this party, or the decorations, or the cupcakes with my face on them. I came back to talk to the kids who were like I was. Kids who aren't given encouragement but still dream bigger than anyone says they should." The music faded. Conversations dropped to whispers. I could feel every eye on me as I turned to face my parents directly. Mom's smile wavered, as if the words I spoke had pierced through her carefully constructed world. Dad's jaw tightened, his hands clenched at his sides. "You told me I chose ambition over family," I said quietly but clearly. "You told me I walked away, that I abandoned you. But the truth is, I outgrew the cage you built around me. I chose myself because I had to. And now, you want to claim the pieces you threw away as your own." The weight of that statement seemed to hang in the air, heavy and undeniable. Marcus opened his mouth like he wanted to say something, but closed it again. Kyle's eyes dropped to the ground, unwilling or unable to meet mine. Anna took a step back and folded her arms, her expression unreadable. I nodded slowly, the resolve in my chest hardening. "I wish things had been different," I admitted. "I wish I had a home to come back to. But I don't. This," I gestured toward the backyard, "is a house I visited once in a while. And now, I'm done visiting." I turned and walked away without looking back. No one followed me. In the days and weeks that followed, the messages stopped. No more emails, no more invitations, no more hollow congratulations. They vanished from my life as if they'd never tried to claim me in the first place. I settled into a new apartment in Seattle shortly after. It was modest, but had a little nook perfect for a small library, my sanctuary. I framed the medal they had tossed in the trash and hung it next to a photo of the students I'd spoken to at the auditorium. Some families lift you up and nurture your dreams. Others try to hold you down, tether you to a place that no longer fits. I found my people. I built my own circle. And I've never looked back. That house? It's just a chapter now. A lesson in what love should not look like. And the hardest truth I've learned? I didn't walk away from them. They let me go. And I rose.